So in this two-part series, we're going to go through both the main render engines in Blender and what the different preferences will do to your scene. As you can see, I've set up a basic test scene with 3 pieces of basic geometry with a material on, and then a tree in the background with one light lighting the scene. I'm adding a sky texture as shown on screen as a way of making the scene look more natural and applying some more ambient light to everything. Now I have to be careful which sky texture I use, as some of them are only available in certain render engines, so I chose one available in both. So the default render engine in Blender is called Eevee, and this is a real-time render engine, which means it runs similarly to engines such as Unreal Engine or Unity. We can find our settings by going to the Render tab, the drop down at the top indicating which render engine we're currently using. So this way of rendering has a multitude of benefits. The first is that it can run on low-end hardware fairly easily. The second benefit is that it can greatly reduce render times as the frames render in practically real time, leading to this render taking around 10 minutes, whereas the same render in Cycles took over an hour. However, Eevee lacks the realism out of the box which Cycles gives you. It lacks real-time reflections and high-quality shadows, both of which come out of the box with Cycles. A lot of Cycles-based materials won't render immediately in Eevee without some tinkering, and although it's a great option for beginners and those on low-end hardware, it can leave renders looking a little flat unless you know how to dive into the nodes and make changes to the render engine itself. But in case you want to use Eevee, there are 4 boxes you can easily tick to increase the quality of your render in seconds. So ambient occlusion is simply a method of faking shadows around the edges of geometry. As Eevee does not use ray tracing to calculate lighting, it uses the geometry locations of objects to guess where there should be shadows. Bloom will lighten up light areas of the scene, inducing a mild lens flare. Screen space reflections allow reflections based on what the camera can see, however they're not ray traced reflections, so will not be updated in real time based on things off camera. And motion blur is crucial to almost all animations, making all movements look far more realistic. If we look at these comparisons, we can see the difference these simple changes have made to our scene. If we look around the edges of geometries, we can see ambient occlusion making them look far more realistic, as if the ambient light is occluded by nearby geometry. If we look at the top of the tree, we can easily see the difference Bloom makes, with the leaves near the light shining brighter at the camera. We can also see minor indications of screen space reflections. If we look at the pyramid on the left, we can see it gets darker when it starts reflecting the objects nearby and the ground. So the settings for Eevee are relatively simple to understand, especially if you understand anything about game engines and graphic settings in those. So I recommend you look through the settings and make some changes and mess around with it to understand what everything does. So thank you for watching part 1 of the tutorial. If you want to see part 2 about Cycles, I recommend subscribing so you can see when the video comes out. Thank you for watching.